Razer has its priorities set on the table for everyone to see. The Razer phone is a smartphone that's meant for content consumption, not content creation. However, being a smartphone to be announced in 2017, it's expected to come with two cameras at the very least, and as most high-end smartphones choose to come with dual camera setups at the rear, Razer also decided to join the bandwagon. While they really haven't talked much about the camera on the Razer phone and haven't really mentioned it as a major feature, it could still be a deciding factor for many consumers. This is Sandeep from Rev Atlas. Let's take a look at what the cameras on the Razer phone can deliver. The Razer phone, like many other flagships in 2017 and 2018, packs a dual camera setup at the back. However, it might seem one that may be just for bragging rights. It has a wide angle and telephoto setup where both are 12 megapixel snappers, but the wide angle lens gets f1.8 aperture while the telephoto lens gets a smaller f2.6 aperture. By default, the camera captures some really unimpressive images. They look really flat and seem like they were captured with something from the mid-2000s, especially due to the appalling dynamic range. I would even hate to call it dynamic range since there is nothing dynamic about it. The images captured have decent detailing as long as there is not a lot of sunlight involved. If there's a lot of sun or too bright of a scenario, then the detailing seems to get softer and sharpness drops a lot, as well as experiencing some weird artifacts and moire. The saving grace is in the form of the HDR mode, which we suggest keeping on at all times, be it well lit or low lit conditions. The HDR mode is pretty aggressive, especially when compared to photos where HDR is turned off. It's almost as if the photos were taken by two different cameras altogether. This is easily apparent, especially in outdoor conditions where there's a huge disparity between the shadows and highlights. Take these two photos for example. The regular mode seems like someone did a selection on the sky and deleted it all together, while in reality only the HDR mode is able to retain information from the highlights. The shadows do get a bit darker while the midtones remain about the same. However, the difference it makes to both images is huge, which is why we said keep the HDR turned on always. Image quality is decent on the wide angle camera, but the quality drops quite a bit on the telephoto camera. This may not be apparent when viewing the image zoomed out or on your social media, but when you zoom in or crop in, it makes a huge difference. In fact, it's probably a better idea to just shoot with the regular camera and crop in later, as in most cases it makes no difference and in some it may even come out better. You also have the option of using it as it is, while that isn't the option if you shoot in 2x mode, as you can't zoom out later. The front-facing camera is an 8MP f2 camera. There's no beautification or portrait mode here, but you can choose to have HDR turned on or off here as well. Without HDR, it would seem as if the sky and my head are literally one single object, but at least the HDR mode creates some separation between the two. Even with HDR turned on, however, the quality isn't great. The colors are fair, but there are some weird artifacts and the sharpness is dodgy. Now onto the video mode, which is probably the aspect of the camera that it does best. It supports 4K 30fps at max, and unlike the photos, the videos do have pretty good detail, contrast and sharpness. However, if you want stabilization, you'll need to choose 1080p mode, which does have EIS. The EIS isn't very aggressive, but at least is better than having none at all. The front-facing camera too can record 1080p videos with a fair amount of detail, sharpness and contrast as well as EIS. This is the front-facing camera on the Razer phone taking 1080p videos. Let me know how the overall sharpness is, stabilization, how the exposure, contrast ratio and various other aspects of the video is, and even how well it's picking up my voice. So let me know. This brings me to a main issue about the Razer camera, which is the app itself. There's nothing to talk about in terms of features on this thing. No panorama mode, no slow motion, no pro or manual mode, and almost nothing except for a basic photo and video mode with a timer as well as toggles for flash, HDR and grid. In fact, the zoom feature was horrible before the update, where they gave seamless zoom which didn't have any indication on whether you were zooming in, so much so that digital zoom was being applied or not. Since then, they've created a 1x and 2x toggle, which makes things a whole lot easier. The Razer phone isn't directed at camera or photography enthusiasts, but it performs decently when it comes to a camera, at least in HDR mode. However, it's further let down by a mediocre telephoto camera and a skeletal level camera app that needs a lot of work even for it to be present on a flagship phone such as this. I again stress that Razer intends this phone for content consumption, gaming or videos or browsing etc., but not one to make photos and videos with. When you think of it that way, it does a fairly good job and can be acceptable if that's what you intend to do with this device. Thanks for watching, see you again in the next one.